Before Eddie Murphy ever cracked the comedy code, a barbershop sitcom in Washington, D.C. was quietly making television history nobody remembers. Get ready for 15 bizarre revelations that will change the way you see this forgotten 70s classic. From a tragic casting swap to a cancellation so cold it happened on Christmas Eve. And stick around for one jaw-dropping bonus fact, tying this show to one of the biggest comedies of the 80s that almost nobody talks about. So speed up with me because the list starts now. Number 1. The lead actor who almost never existed. Picture an entirely different version of this show, one built around a completely different star. Before Clifton Davis ever walked onto that barbershop set, the concept existed under another name, with another man in the lead. The original pilot was called The First Family of Washington, and it starred legendary comedian Godfrey Cambridge in the role that would eventually become Clifton Curtis, working alongside Teresa Merritt as his mother, exactly as she'd appear in the final series. That pilot aired as a one-off special a full year before the show officially premiered in 1974. Cambridge wasn't some unknown gambling on a break. By 1965, Time magazine had already named him one of the country's foremost comic talents, right alongside Bill Cosby and Dick Gregory. He'd earned a Tony nomination on Broadway and starred in groundbreaking films like Watermelon Man and Cotton Comes to Harlem. That's the kind of resume that should have locked in a starring role for years. But when the network moved forward with the full series, everything got retooled. New title, new character name, and Clifton Davis stepping into the role instead. Here's where the story turns tragic. Godfrey Cambridge died suddenly on November 29, 1976, at just 43 years old, suffering a fatal heart attack while filming the television movie Victory at Entebbe. His death came barely a year after this very show had already wrapped its run, leaving behind a haunting question fans still ask today. What would this whole series have looked like if the funniest man in the room had stayed in the chair the entire time? Number 2. The studio's guinea pig experiment. This next fact sounds small until you realize what was actually riding on it. This sitcom carries a piece of television history most casual viewers never clocked. It was the very first series ever produced under the Columbia Pictures television banner, meaning the entire show functioned as a test run for a major Hollywood studio stepping into TV production for the first time. Before this premiere in September of 1974, that division had operated for decades as Screen Gems, the company behind hits like Bewitched, The Flying Nun, and The Partridge Family throughout the 60s and early 70s. Then on May 6, 1974, the company officially rebranded from Screen Gems to Columbia Pictures Television. Executives needed a flagship show to prove the new name could deliver, and this barbershop comedy became that experiment, premiering just 4 months after the corporate name change. Think about the pressure that creates. Every casting decision, every joke, every scheduling call was being watched by executives desperate to know if their multi-million-dollar rebrand would actually translate into a hit. The show wasn't just trying to entertain audiences. It was trying to convince an entire industry that a new studio name deserved a seat at the table. If you are enjoying this, take 2 seconds and leave a like. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. That support really motivates my work and helps a lot with bringing more content. Number 3. Television's cruelest cancellation date. Television cancellations sting, but this one takes cruelty to another level entirely. The final episode aired on December 24, 1975, Christmas Eve. While most networks avoid major programming decisions during the holidays out of basic decency toward cast, crew, and loyal viewers, the network decided this was the perfect moment to pull the plug after just 39 episodes across 2 seasons. The timing gets worse the more you look at it. Season 2 had launched that September with genuine hope of a ratings turnaround, but the show only made it through 13 episodes before the axe fell mid-season. Instead of finishing the season, or even waiting until January, the network chose Christmas Eve as the final broadcast date, handing cast and crew a cancellation notice as their holiday gift. The show was immediately replaced by The Bionic Woman, a clear signal of where network confidence actually sat. There was no proper finale, no chance for writers to craft a real ending, no goodbye scene for the cast. Families expecting holiday programming instead got the quiet, unceremonious death of a show that had been part of their weekly routine for over a year. It remains one of the most tone-deaf scheduling decisions of the entire decade. Number 4. The star who secretly wrote a Jackson 5 classic. Now for something almost nobody connects to this show. The lead actor had already conquered the music industry years before he ever stepped onto a soundstage. 3 years before this series premiered, Clifton Davis wrote Never Can Say Goodbye, which became a massive number 2 hit for the Jackson 5 in 1971, kept off the top spot only by Three Dog Night's Joy to the World. The song featured a 12-year-old Michael Jackson delivering a performance far beyond his years, and the story behind its creation is almost as good as the song itself. Davis was playing the melody on a keyboard in Motown's Los Angeles offices when producer Hal Davis, working in the paper-thin walled room next door, overheard it and immediately recognized a hit. He walked in, asked to record it with the Jackson 5 on the spot, and the track was cut with session musicians that same night, with the group's vocals added just 2 days later. Here's the twist. The song was originally meant for the Supremes before Motown executives redirected it to their younger act instead. Never Can Say Goodbye went on to become one of the most covered songs in pop music history. Gloria Gaynor turned it into a disco anthem in 1974 that hit number 9 and became the first ever song to top Billboard's brand new disco chart. Isaac Hayes, Smokey Robinson, and Stevie Wonder all recorded their own versions later. So the same man playing a barbershop owner on your television screen also quietly helped shape the sound of an entire decade of pop music. Number 5, a real-life romance sparked by a cast replacement. Sometimes the most unexpected love stories happen right on set, and this one started because of a role change nobody saw coming. Co-stars Teddy Wilson and Joan Pringle met and fell for each other during production. Wilson had been playing Earl Chambers, the easygoing mailman turned barber, since the 3rd episode, while Pringle joined the cast when she stepped into the role of Tracy Curtis Taylor at the start of season 2 in 1975. The chemistry was immediate, and what began as a professional relationship deepened into something real during long hours of filming together. Their on-screen bond as family and friends translated into an actual romance that continued long after the show's Christmas Eve cancellation. The couple dated for years before marrying in 1980 and eventually had twins together, a son named Robert Kenyatta and a daughter named Nicole Naomi. Their professional paths kept crossing too. Both actors later appeared on The White Shadow. And when Pringle became pregnant with their twins during that show's production, the writers wrote her real pregnancy into the storyline and cast Wilson as her character's estranged husband. Tragically, the marriage ended not by choice, but by fate. Teddy Wilson suffered a fatal stroke in July of 1991 at just 47 years old, leaving Pringle to raise their 9-year-old twins alone, though she eventually found love again. It's one of the most genuinely touching real-life stories to come out of any 70s sitcom set. Number 6. The actress who vanished without explanation. Here's a mystery this show never officially solved. One of the strangest behind-the-scenes puzzles involves the sudden, unexplained exit of original cast member Lynn Moody, who played Tracy Curtis Taylor, the lead character's sister. Moody appeared from the very first episode in September of 1974 and stuck around for roughly 20 to 23 episodes, making it through most of season 1 before abruptly leaving production with zero public explanation. When journalists finally pressed for answers, Moody's manager gave Jet magazine only a cryptic, unsatisfying line in 1975, saying simply that she didn't like the part anymore. That's it. That's the whole official explanation. Naturally, fans and entertainment writers filled the silence with theories, contract disputes, creative clashes with producers, tension with other cast members, or maybe a better opportunity elsewhere that demanded her immediate availability. None of these theories were ever confirmed by Moody or anyone connected to the production, and the real reason remains a mystery to this day. Joan Pringle stepped into the role for the rest of season 1 and carried it through the entire 2nd season until cancellation, ultimately playing Tracy in around 17 or 18 episodes. The transition happened so fast that viewers barely had time to register the change before the new Tracy was fully woven into the storylines. Moody, for her part, moved on to bigger things, later appearing as Irene Harvey in the landmark 1977 miniseries Roots. Number 7. The show that couldn't beat a prairie drama. This next fact explains exactly why this sitcom never stood a chance in the ratings, no matter how good the writing was. The show was scheduled on Wednesday nights directly against two of the biggest programs on television during the mid-70s. NBC was airing Little House on the Prairie, the Michael Landon family drama that became an instant ratings powerhouse the very same month this sitcom debuted in September of 1974. At the exact same time, CBS was running Tony, Orlando, and Dawn, a musical variety show packed with performances, comedy sketches, and celebrity guests that pulled in enormous audiences. Week after week, this barbershop comedy got completely steamrolled by both juggernauts, unable to pull enough viewers away from either option. The show never once cracked the top 30 most watched programs in America across either of its 2 seasons, which made it almost impossible for network executives to justify keeping it on the schedule, no matter how loyal its smaller fan base actually was. Families across the country were simply choosing between the wholesome adventures of the Ingalls family or Tony Orlando's energetic variety hour, and this sitcom got lost in the middle. This scheduling decision alone practically doomed the series before a single joke could land, proving that even a well-made show can die purely from bad time slot placement rather than lack of quality. Number 8. The Mailman character that went through 3 actors. Now here's a casting mess that even devoted fans usually miss. The character of Earl Chambers, the lead's best friend and neighborhood mailman, went through an unusually chaotic casting journey involving 3 different actors before finally settling down. Ed Bernard played Earl first in the pilot episode and one more, establishing him as a friendly postal worker who spent his downtime at the barbershop. But between the pilot and the regular series, Bernard landed a role as a detective on the police drama Policewoman, creating a scheduling conflict that pulled him off this show after just 2 episodes. Here's where it gets genuinely confusing. Teddy Wilson, the actor who'd eventually become the permanent Earl, actually appeared in the pilot, playing a completely different character, a shady lawyer named Andrew Carruthers, whose client tried to claim the lead character had fathered her baby. Wilson then briefly played yet another character, simply named Teddy, in a single episode before producers finally decided to hand him the role of Earl Chambers. Starting in episode 3, that means eagle-eyed viewers who watched from the very beginning saw the same actor play 3 completely separate characters within the show's opening episodes. Once Wilson locked into Earl, he stayed there for the remaining 38 episodes through cancellation, and the character evolved from mailman into full barbershop partner, with Wilson's comedic timing making audiences forget the confusing early shuffle entirely. Before we keep going, subscribe if you haven't yet. Drop a comment telling me which movie or show you want me to cover next, with strange behind-the-scenes facts. I read every single one. Number 9. This sitcom was secretly a future TV icon's training ground. Nobody watching in 1974 realized they were staring at a future television legend in the making. Ted Lange's performance as Junior, the suave, gossip-hungry ladies' man who burst through the barbershop door in nearly every episode, was building the exact comedic muscle he'd need for the role that would define his entire career. Just 2 years after this show got canceled, Lange landed the part of Isaac Washington, the charming bartender on The Love Boat, which premiered in 1977 and ran for 9 seasons through 1986. That role turned him into a household name, with his character's signature double finger point becoming instantly recognizable in the opening credits every single week. Rather than resenting being tied to one character, Lange leaned all the way in, reprising Isaac Washington in cameos and reunion specials for decades afterward. He even eventually moved into directing episodes of The Love Boat, proving that the comedic instincts sharpened at a small barbershop set had prepared him for a much bigger stage. It's a genuinely rare example of a struggling, low-rated sitcom accidentally functioning as the launchpad for one of the most recognizable characters in television history. Number 10. A real pregnancy written into another show with her real husband. The off-screen romance between 2 of this show's stars kept intersecting with their professional lives in the strangest ways. Joan Pringle landed a starring role on the CBS drama The White Shadow, which premiered in 1978 and followed a coach at an inner-city Los Angeles high school. She played Carol Buchanan, moving from vice principal to principal over the show's 3-season run through 1981. During production, Pringle discovered she was pregnant with twins, and rather than hiding it with baggy clothes and awkward camera angles, the writers made the bold choice to write her real pregnancy directly into the story. Then they went one step further. They brought in Teddy Wilson, Pringle's actual husband, to play her character's estranged spouse on screen, meaning the real-life couple was portraying a fractured marriage on television while preparing to welcome their actual twins, Robert and Nicole, in real life. This arrangement let Pringle keep working through her pregnancy without derailing production, and it gave her real husband extra screen time on a hit series. It's the kind of blurred reality storytelling that television rarely attempts, and it only happened because two actors who fell in love on a barbershop set kept finding ways to write their real lives into their fictional ones. Number 11. The forgotten revival nobody remembers. A full decade after cancellation, the studio actually tried to bring this show back from the dead, and almost nobody knows it happened. Columbia Pictures Television produced a revival pilot in 1986 that never made it to series. The studio had been inspired by the surprise success of What's Happening Now, which had successfully revived What's Happening in first-run syndication starting in 1985, proving audiences still had appetite for updated versions of beloved 70s sitcoms. Executives believed they could copy that formula, so they built a pilot catching up with the characters more than 10 years later. Ted Lang returned to reprise Jr., though the character had transformed from a gossip-loving ladies' man into a respectable storefront lawyer in Washington, D.C. Teresa Merritt also returned as Mama Curtis, providing continuity with the original, while new actors rounded out the cast. Clifton Davis, however, was unavailable, having just signed on to star in the NBC sitcom Amen, which premiered that same year and ran 5 successful seasons. Because the revival was designed for syndication rather than network television, it needed individual stations across the country to commit to airing it before production could move forward. Not enough stations signed on, and the studio abandoned the project rather than gamble on a full season that might not find an audience. It's a revival that essentially vanished before most fans of the original ever knew it existed. Number 12. Two stars reunited on a completely different hit show. The chemistry between the lead actor and one of the barbershop regulars proved strong enough to bring them back together over a decade later. One co-star had played Wildcat, one of the elderly regulars who hung around the shop providing comic relief throughout the show's 2-season run. The two performers clearly enjoyed working together and stayed friends long after cancellation, which eventually led to a professional reunion when Clifton Davis was cast as the star of NBC's Amen in 1986. That series featured Davis as a prominent church deacon in Philadelphia, and producers brought in his old barbershop co-star for another role, giving the two performers another chance to showcase the rapport they'd built years earlier. Amen became a genuine hit for NBC, running 5 successful seasons through 1991, proving their chemistry hadn't faded and could translate into a completely different setting and style of comedy. Where the original show centered on a barbershop with a younger ensemble, Amen focused on church life with far more mature storylines. Yet both actors adapted seamlessly. Actors who dislike working together rarely go out of their way to reunite, so this second collaboration says everything about how genuinely positive their original partnership had been. Number 13. The DVD release that quietly cut scenes fans never got back. Fans who waited decades for an official home release got a frustrating surprise when it finally arrived. Sony Pictures Home Entertainment released the complete series on DVD in August of 2005, and again in a repackaged edition in June of 2017. The problem is that most episodes across both releases were presented in their edited for syndication versions, rather than the original broadcast cuts, meaning viewers weren't actually getting the episodes as they aired on network television back in 1974 and 1975. When shows get prepped for syndication, several minutes typically get trimmed to make room for extra commercial breaks, which means jokes, character beats, and entire scenes can vanish in the editing room. Only a small handful of episodes across both DVD releases appeared in their original, unedited form with full runtimes intact. and Sony never explained why some episodes got proper treatment while most didn't. The edited versions run around 22 minutes each, while the original broadcast would have run closer to 25 or 26 minutes without those syndication cuts. What makes this especially strange is that Sony owned the complete original masters and easily could have used the unedited versions for these releases, but chose the syndicated cuts instead. Dedicated fans hoping to finally experience the show exactly as it aired were left with an incomplete piece of television history. And to this day, nobody has released a properly restored edition featuring the full original episodes. Quick reminder to subscribe if you are enjoying these revelations, and tell me in the comments, do you know any strange fact about this movie that I didn't mention? Let's build the list together. Number 14, the catchphrase that became unforgettable. Before we get to the bonus, one more thing needs saying about why fans still remember this show at all. Ted Lange's character, Junior, became one of the most memorable parts of the entire series thanks to a single, explosive entrance routine that appeared in nearly every episode across both seasons. Whenever Junior had fresh neighborhood gossip to deliver, he'd burst through the barbershop door with total enthusiasm and shout his signature line, "Ooh-wee, I got it, and I've got to report it," before spilling the latest rumor to everyone in the shop. The line became so tightly linked to the character that audiences would anticipate it the second Lange appeared on screen, and it perfectly captured Junior's identity as the neighborhood's self-appointed information broker who always seemed to know what was happening before anyone else did. The writers understood something crucial about 70s sitcom formula: repetition builds comfort. Shows like Good Times, with JJ's Dynamite and What's Happening with Rerun's own catchphrases, had already proven audiences loved predictable moments they could count on week after week. Some viewers found the constant repetition mildly grating over time, sure, but there's no denying it turned Junior into a standout character and gave Ted Lange a calling card that stuck with him for the rest of his career. Almost at the end, and the best is still coming. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and drop your city or country in the comments. I want to see how far this video is reaching. Bonus: the Eddie Murphy connection. Almost nobody realizes is fake. Here's the fact we teased at the very start, and it's the strangest one on this entire list. This forgotten 70s sitcom found a bizarre, permanent afterlife thanks to Eddie Murphy's 1988 comedy classic, Coming to America. And most people who've seen that movie have absolutely no idea what's really going on in this scene. In the film, Murphy plays multiple characters, including Randy Watson, the spectacularly untalented lounge singer fronting a band called Sexual Chocolate, who performs at a local talent show in Queens. Right before Randy stumbles onto the stage to butcher his rendition of The Greatest Love of All, Reverend Brown, played by Arsenio Hall, introduces him to the crowd as a young man they all know as Joe the Policeman from the What's Going Down episode of this very sitcom, handing the washed-up performer a claim to fame that sounds completely legitimate. Here's the twist: it's entirely made up. This show really existed. It really ran on network television, but that episode title and that character never existed anywhere in the actual series. The joke works precisely because this sitcom had been off the air for 13 years by the time Coming to America hit theaters, making it just obscure enough that younger viewers assumed the whole reference was fictional, while older viewers who actually remembered the show were left wondering if they'd somehow missed an episode. Murphy and his writers deliberately chose a real, semi-forgotten show specifically to make Randy Watson's desperate grasp at relevance feel more pathetic and more real. That single fictional cameo has kept this sitcom alive in pop culture conversations decades longer than its actual ratings ever earned it, with Coming to America fans still searching for an episode that was never actually made. And those were 15 strange facts about That's My Mama, the barbershop sitcom that barely lasted 2 seasons, but somehow left fingerprints all over the next 50 years of television and music. Between a secret Jackson 5 songwriter, a fake Eddie Murphy cameo, and a real-life marriage born on set, this forgotten show mattered a lot more than its ratings ever suggested. If you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments which fact surprised you the most. And don't forget to suggest another movie or show that deserves a list of strange facts. See you in the next video.